So today we're going to go over the fundamental theorem of algebra. So we talked about this as we were going along. So we want to find the roots of this polynomial expression, x to the fifth minus 4x, x to the fourth minus 3x cubed plus 3x squared minus 4x plus 4 equals 0. Notice my degree is 5. The fundamental theorem of algebra says there's going to be 5 solutions. So this is the way I figure out the possible roots. I look at my coefficient for my largest degree, which is 5. So this is going to be my q value, that equals 1. And then my constant term is 4. That's going to be my p value. So I'm going to figure out the factors of 4. So my factors of 4 is 1 times 4 is 4, and 2 times 2. So these are all the factors of 4, 1, 2, and 4. My possible roots, my possible solutions, I'm going to take p, which is 4, divided by q, but q here is 1, and then I'm going to make them all plus or minus. So my possible roots is plus or minus 1, plus or minus 2, plus or minus 4. So I'm going to figure out the possible roots. So I could use 1, 2, 4, or I could use negative 1, negative 2, negative 4. But to make this much easier for me to figure out which one of these are root, I'm going to go to Desmos.com and make a graph. So on Desmos, I put in my equation right here. And then I could look. Here's one of my solutions right here. It's negative 2. Here's another solution. Here's another solution. So I am going to pick one of these solutions. If I have x to the fifth, I need 5 solutions, but I only can see 3 right here. So I'm going to use 1 because I saw that was one of my solutions. So I'm going to write my coefficients. So I have 1, negative 1, negative 3, 3, negative 4, and positive 4. So I'm going to do synthetic division. I am going to bring down my first number, 1. I'm going to multiply. 1 times 1 is 1. I'm going to add these, so I get 0. 1 times 0 is 0. So I'm going to add these, I get negative 3. 1 times negative 3 is negative 3. I'm going to add them, I get 0. 1 times 0 is 0. I add them, I get negative 4. I'm going to go 1 times negative 4 is negative 4. I get 0. So this is a factor because I got 0. So 1 is a 0, so I got x minus 1. That's how I got x minus 1 because it made it a 0. So I started out with x to the fifth. So I'm going to go down 1 degree. So I have x to the fourth. And really I have 0x cubed, so I didn't write that down. But I have minus 3x squared. I have 0x, so I didn't write that down. So then I brought my 4 down. So we already know, if I just complete this column, we already know that was 1 because I got 0. It's a factor. I'm going to use the quadratic method to figure these out. What multiplies x to the fourth? It's x squared and x squared. What multiplies to negative 4 and adds to negative 3? That's minus 4 and plus 1, and then I check the middle. So this x squared has to be equal to 4, because 4 minus 4 is 0. Square root of 4 is 2. So I get plus or minus 2. That's where I got the negative 2, and that's where I got the positive 2. So this x squared has to equal negative 1. So the square root of negative 1 is plus or minus I. And look, this is 5 answers. So here's 1, 2, 3, 3 real numbers and 2 imaginary numbers. The imaginary numbers always come in conjugates. So if I had the fifth degree, I could have 5 real numbers or 3 real numbers or 1 real number, and the rest has to be the balance of the imaginary numbers. In problem number 2, I am going to find all the zeros. So I have x to the fourth plus x cubed minus 7x squared minus 9x minus 18. My degree is 4, so there must be 4 zeros. I can have 4 real numbers, or I could have 2 real numbers, or I could have 0 real numbers. Because if I have imaginary numbers, they only come in sets of 2, so they're always conjugates. So my Q is 1, my P is 18. So I'm going to factor 18. 1 times 18, 2 times 9, 3 times 6, and then I need to do plus or minus. The most common mistake on the test is kids do not put the plus or minus. If you don't put the plus or minus, that means you missed half of the possible roots. So what I did to figure out which one really is a root, I put it on Desmos, and I found on the graph 3 is actually one of the roots. So I'm going to use 3 instead of just randomly picking one, because I know 3 will work. So I'm going to write my coefficients to do my synthetic division. I have 1, and then I have 1 right here. Then I have negative 7, and I have negative 9, and then I have negative 18. So I just wrote my coefficients. So my first step is to bring my first number down. So I brought 1 down. And then I'm going to go 3 times 1 is 3. I'm going to add them. It gives me 4. I'm going to go 3 times 4 is 12. I'm going to add them. I get 5. I'm going to go 3 times 5 is 15. I'm going to add those. I get 6. 3 times 6 is 18. I get 0. This is a factor. If it's not a factor, I would have to pick a different one. That's why I use the graph to look to see which is the factor. 3 makes it 0, so then it's got to be x minus 3 is one of the factors. So I have x minus 3. I started out with the 4th, so that means that it has to be the 3rd. So then I have 4x squared. Then I have 5x plus 6. So using the same list, I could figure out the other factors, or I could look at the graph again and see that negative 3 is one of the solutions. So I'm going to do synthetic division with negative 3, so I'm going to write my coefficients 1, 4, 5, 6. So I'm going to bring my first number down. So 3 times 1 is 3. Negative 3, I'm going to add it, 1. Negative 3 times 1, negative 3, add them, 2. Negative 3 times 2 is negative 6. I get 0, it's a factor. So I know x minus 3 is a factor, because I saw in the graph that would be 3. X plus 3 is a factor, so that would be negative 3. And then I rewrote this from the synthetic division. So I have x squared plus x plus 2. I try to factor this. What multiplies to 2 and adds to 1? There isn't anything. So that means I'm going to use a quadratic formula. So here's my A, here's my B, here's my C. And then I plug it into the quadratic formula. And that's how I got my answers. So if I got negative 7, that's where I comes from. So look at this problem. I have 2 real and then 2 imaginary. That's 4 solutions. So in problem number 3, I got x cubed minus 3x squared plus x minus 3 equals 0. I want to find all the roots. My degree is 3. There's got to be 3 roots. It could be 3 real roots. It could be 1 real root and 2 imaginary. Those are my only choices because I have to have 3 roots. So I'm going to look at my possible roots. I'm going to go P, my factors of P are 1 and 3. Then Q is 1, so I have plus or minus 1, plus or minus 3. So I really only have 4 choices to do. So here's my graph of the function. I can see there's only 1 real solution, which is 3. That means the other 2 have to be imaginary. So I know I am going to divide this out and get 3. Because 3 is a solution, so it's got to be x minus 3. So I'm going to write my coefficients. So I have 1. I have negative 3. I have 1. Then negative 3. I'll bring my first number down. 1. 3 times 1 is 3. Add them, I get 0. 3 times 0 is 0. Add them, I get 1. 3 times 3 is 3. Add them, I get 0. I got 0. It's a factor because I can see it right here. It's a factor. So I start out with x cubed. That means that has to be x squared. This is 0x, so I'm not writing it. And then this is 1. It's got to equal 0. So negative 1 plus 1 is 0, so x squared has got to equal 0. The square root of negative 1 is the imaginary number. So here's one of the answers. One of the solutions is 3. Here's the other 2. They're imaginary solutions.